As, among other things, the nephew of Francis Schaeffer. He's the head of Into Thy Word Ministries, and he trains pastors using Facebook, and he's going to come up and tell us all about that now.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here. I've got my paws on a lot of stuff. I'm a pastor. I'm a missionary. I've been doing pastoral ministry since around 78 when I was still in high school. And, of course, Francis Schaeffer got me started in all that. And when I first started, I was a very liberal Christian who always fought him until the day he died. Then after he died, my eyes were opened and I became more of a solid, committed Christian. But what I'm here to talk to you about is training pastors. That's my passion. I went to Fuller. I've been a pastor, youth pastor. I'm part of Lake Avenue Church right now. It's a little church in Pasadena.
Little church, yeah.
Yeah, a little church in Pasadena.
Church.
And we have been strong missions for over 100 years. And when I first started off in pastoral ministry, I was just kind of saddened because no one was training pastors. You know, we're digging wells, very important. We're doing all this other stuff. But no one was really reaching the pastors that I was aware of. And so God put that in my heart and learned and experienced and gone. I've gone into probably 80 different countries, but my heart is South Central Asia. India, Pakistan, just don't tell anybody. And that's where my heart is. I don't really care for the food, and I can't stand the heat. And I don't like to, that kind of traveling on those dirt roads and being mauled by monkeys and getting accosted by the police. They don't like me very much down there. But I love it. I love it because I'm connecting with people and God is using me and churches are being planted, pastors are being trained. And the ministry is beyond anything I could ever experienced or expected. But I'm here to talk to you about training pastors, and or any kind of ministry endeavor. You know, if you're not into pastoral ministry, you don't train pastors. What I'm talking about is transferable to any kind of ministry that uses communication. I'm using communication right now. I'm talking. And so I want you to think of two questions. By the way, I'm going to be flopping around here because I have multiple sclerosis. So you see me flopping around. If I fall over, no worries. I do that. So it's just part of what I do. But I'm sitting down. I should be okay. Two questions I want you to think of. What is the easiest, most effective way to communicate? Because that's what ministry is. It's communication. And second, what is one of the best means to get the gospel out? And you've heard several speakers giving you incredible ways to get the gospel out. That is platforms for that communication. Because I'm talking to, let's say, 30 people here, or 300 people here, or 3,000 people here. But you can take that and multiply it, what John was saying. And I have a website that I get 30,000 people a day to. And because it's just full of Bible studies. It's Bible studies without nonsense, inductive Bible studies. And there's 30, and I have another one called churchleadership.org, which is resources for pastors and seminarians and researchers. And that gets thousands and thousands of people a day. And I can't do all that, so I'm using a platform to get that communication out. But besides the people in this room, the vast majority of people in ministry, and especially in missions, haven't embraced technology very much, at least that I'm aware of. And so when you ask them, what's the best delivery mechanism, they say print. The organization I'm part of, Into Thy Word, we've been doing print media for the past 35, 40 years, and that's still part of what we do. Then there's radio, and then there's all kinds of different communication avenues that we do. And some of us are stuck in these avenues. And all those are great avenues. You need to talk to people individually. You need radio. And, I wouldn't use TV for ministry. That's been abused. But there's all kinds of different ways. But we have to expand our mind to what are the possibilities. See, the internet, we're not using it very much. I teach at a church in Pasadena, not Lake Avenue, another one I teach in now and then, and they don't believe in the internet. They don't have a website. It's a church of 50 people. Why do I teach there? Well, because they pay me. So if you pay me, I'll show up. And they have a preschool there. My son went there, so they know me. And I can't get them to do this. And so they're just a small, ingrown church that's dying. And they're going to die. And somebody's going to buy their building, probably a Korean church, and they're going to explode in that neighborhood. But that old sea of white hair is dying because they haven't embraced the possibilities. So our ministry, we were able to start on the internet literally in '94 when it first started. And before that, in the bulletin boards, I think that's where I met John on the bulletin boards, probably in the early 80s when I first started. And I got this AT&T internet device. And I was just playing with it. You plug it into your TV, you plug it into your phone. I was taking a computer science course at college. And then I discovered Russian scientists. Ooh, this is the Cold War. This is James Bond stuff. I was communicating with Russian scientists. And one of them asked me, do you know anybody who's a Christian? Wow. Well, I'm a Christian. I'm a youth pastor in my church. And that started my communication to pastors overseas. And at that time, an American going to Russia and preaching the gospel really wasn't likely. A few years later, I would end up going there, but it just didn't happen. So there's a technological revolution, and the internet is a new actual age of communication. I don't know if you ever heard the term, but in anthropology, there's 3 actual ages. The one when communication was developed, and this formation of people groups and language, cultures, and all that. And the second one is the printing press. There's a third one that's been emerging since the dawn of radio and print media. And that's the third actual age that we're able to communicate with each other through mass distances without going anywhere, radio. And now with the internet, it's surpassed that. So now the gospel is on this new age of communication. So that brings us, what's the best way to get the gospel out? And all those ways are good, but we got to think beyond the box. And how do we train the people that we're working with? How do we communicate with people we're working with? Especially in closed countries, especially with unreached people groups. Because sometimes you can't go there physically. Or if you can, it might take you months or years to even connect with anyone. And there's no Bible schools there, what John was talking about. There's no seminaries. There's no real training. And sometimes what they have over there doesn't work. Like when I first started off doing this, I went to India in 2000, and there was nothing over there to train pastors. There's a couple things from Benny Hinn's ministry, and then that's it. There was nothing out there. So we had to come back and use the resources, the U.S. Center World Mission and Fuller Seminary, and start creating materials. Then, what happened next was amazing. That guy, brown turtleneck sweater, developed this. Actually, the biggest revolution in ministry and communication. This revolutionized everything. You probably don't realize how much it's revolutionized our society. Before this happened 12 years ago, people's thumbs were very weak. People didn't know about these birds that were really ticked off. And nobody really liked cats until we saw how cute they can be. And this told us that all that is good. And it can be used to change the world. This guy changed the world previous, 1976. That's my wooden contraption. That's basically a dresser I found at a garage sale, and I cut it up and I stuck the original Apple I, which was a circuit board and a power source, And then I closed in there, put a fan there, wrote Apple because it's an Apple. And that was the very first Apple computer in a closure, because that was Steve Jobs' vision to make it. And I tried. I was 13 years old at the time. It's the best I could do. And that was stolen from me, because that would be worth $500,000 now. And I really can use that money. So anyone sees that, please let me know. But that changed the world, because even though there were computers and mainframes, now the average person can get onto a computer. And then a few years later, in 1988, he developed a new type of computer called the NeXT computer. It was overpriced, it didn't have the software needed, and so it flopped. But what didn't flop is the architecture for that. The architecture for that NeXT computer is in here. The coding, the architecture is what developed iPhone. They just figured out a way to make it smaller. And like, do you ever see the John Belushi movie, 1941, where the Japanese try to invade Santa Monica? And then they got this big radio and trying to get into the sub because they want to steal the technology of this radio. And one of the Japanese officers says, we need to learn how to make this smaller. Smaller. Smaller is better. It changed everything. So we can do this. Play Angry Birds. But I think we have a better way to do it. Because we don't have to lug around a 25-pound portable computer anymore. We now have this 4.8-inch little computer. And at the time this was invented, social media was starting. Anybody was on Friendster then? Or MySpace? Or a lot of us Christians were on In Jesus, which I had a group on In Jesus. And I was communicating on that. Well, during 2004, there was another guy, a Harvard student, figured out, you know what? I'm not sure how hot the girls are in my college. So I'm going to create an app that will rate the hotness of girls. And that turned into Facebook. That's how it started. And so Facebook and the iPhone were started at the same time. That revolutionized everything in missions. Sad part is most Christian organizations, most churches and pastors haven't really jumped onto this connecting tool, because that Punjabi, his last name is Mr. Singh, by the way, and he is in the breadbasket of India, and he's on one of these, an Nextel or a Nokia phone, that's what they have over there, and he's on Facebook, he's on apps that we have, and he's communicating with people that are his family and people he knows. He may not know about the Lord, but he can find out on here. Or we can find him. We can connect with him. There's ways to do that. Oh, sorry. There's ways to connect with him. And there's ways, and this is revolutionized ministry. Now, I love going to Punjabi, because that's the area of India where I actually like the food. And that's why they're much bigger over there. And I can blend in, I can wear my outfit, I can put a turban on my head, and I can sneak into Pakistan, which is how I get in there. And engage in people, sending out Facebook messages, sending out emails, talking to people, and getting this going by creating this communication structure. I'm going to backtrack. In 1978, when I first started in ministry, the walls we had was print media. Then in 1983, on my very first missions trip, I was hanging out with real missionaries. Wow. And because my church is Liberal Episcopal Church, we didn't have any missionaries. But I met some real missionaries that they were going to Honduras. And so I got a group of people from my church to go with them. And as we were getting ready, one of our people down there already in Honduras, a bishop, was kidnapped. So we're going there to negotiate his release. But watching these missionaries, they spent years learning the language. They spent years in mobilization and fundraising and support and building this team and to go down there. And by the way, this is 1983. If you're familiar with history at that time, they were having some problems. The Sandinistas and Contras, they didn't like each other, they're shooting at each other. We got involved in that. I got kidnapped for 2 weeks. That was a lot of fun. Escaped, ran into Russian soldiers. Words were said, gunshots were said, grenades were thrown, and I was thrown 30 feet by a grenade blast. By the grace of God, I had very little injuries except a crushed vertebrae, which I still live with. No money for that surgery. And that was my first look into missions. And I said, well, that's enough of that. I'm going to go back to being a youth pastor. And so that, several missions trips later, I kept going. I've discovered India. And I needed, what is the best way I can communicate with my pastors that are over there? We were planting churches, we're training pastors. We have a website that does that, pastortraining.org. But it's still unsafe, it's still dangerous. So we stumbled upon, I don't know who told me about it, Facebook secret groups. On Facebook, you can develop a secret group that only the people on that group see the information that's on there. By the way, that's one of my public group, Pastors Fellowship page. You can get the notes and a PowerPoint for this presentation. And Pastors Fellowship page, you can find it easily. And on that page is dozens of files. A full seminary library is on there. We have the same information on our secret pages. This one you can go see, but our pastors in Pakistan are on a different one that's not seen. The ones in other areas. And now I'm just there a few weeks out of the year because I have to take care of my son who has autism and eat food I like and stay in the States and research the materials that I need to put together, and I go back and teach them. And it is just a phenomenal mechanism. Now, most of our people are on there, and we're in 80 different countries. I have 2 people that are in North Korea right now. And North Korea blocks Facebook. They bring in the SD cards, the Raspberry Pis. There's all kinds of workarounds. But every now and then, their firewall is down. And when it's down, and because there's power outages, they come to one of these sites and download the materials. And it's really easy to do one. If you can stand in line and get a Starbucks coffee and pay $6 for it and drink it, by that time you can make one of these. You can put all your files and videos, everything can be on there. There's really no bandwidth limit. There's file limit size, but there's 100 megabytes. And you just go to the top right-hand corner. Once you create a Facebook account for yourself, you don't already have one, click that black triangle, and it takes you down, and it's very easy. Just make sure if there's 2 groups, secret group, public group. If you don't want people seeing your stuff, make it secret, vet everyone is on it. Excuse me. Or you let the fox into the hen house. Excuse me. And that is one of our prime means of communication. You can use a smartphone, as the original smartphone, and you can communicate anywhere in the world. Because I'm going to tell you something. When I first started doing this, there was 100 million people on Facebook. I got on Facebook late. Now there's 1.7 billion as of July. Pretty soon, a quarter of the world's population will be on it, and pretty soon a third of the world's population will be on it. Mr. Singh that you saw, he's on it. And you're going to be able to communicate. You can run searches, you can find other groups, meet people, build relationships, and invite them to your secret group and do ministry with them. Share the love of the Lord, share questions. It's amazing what you can do, because on this tiny little thing, you have a comprehensive communication platform that can reach literally a quarter of the world. And there's no limit to what you can do. You still need to do the conventional means. Sometimes in Unreached People group, you can go and still connect with people face to face. But what we use it for is training our pastors. We have all our materials on there. We guide them. We have admins. I get on there. I have little seminars on there in real time. It's just amazing. We don't need millions of dollars. to build a seminary in all these different countries. We just have it here. And then they translate the materials. I'm going to check out that new app. I can't wait to check that out. We translate the materials, and they put them on VCDs, or they own Facebook accounts, and they plant churches with them. They train their people. And our biggest thing with Into Thy Word, because of Schaefer's influence, is discipleship. Everything we do is discipleship oriented. And it's amazing what God has done. And you can do it too. Go to Pastors Fellowship page on Facebook. Just become a member. That's a public group. And all those files, including my presentation and PowerPoint, will be on there. And you can also communicate with me if you have questions. Also on the table by the water cooler is my business cards and organizations I work with, the Schaefer Institute. And also I do the Glass Convention, CMTA in Pasadena. We have about 1,000 church leaders that come. In the springtime, we're going to be end of April. And if you're interested in that, pick up one of the cards. I think it's one of the best conferences. John is one of our presenters, and to be a part of something. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope this information is useful to you.